Hello guys, welcome back once again, and today video we will be sharing something how dopamine works for ourselves. You probably don't have a problem playing video games or browsing social media on your phone. In fact, I have no doubt you could sit in front of a screen and do both of these activities for 2 hours or even longer without breaking your concentration. But what about half an hour of studying? That might be too hard. How about working on your side business for another hour? Doesn't sound too appealing, even though you logically know that studying, exercising, building a business, or something equally productive will bring you more benefits in the long run. You still prefer watching TV, playing video games, and scrolling through social media. One might argue that it's obvious why. One activity is easy and doesn't require much effort, while the other activity is difficult and it requires you to apply yourself. But some people seem to have no problem studying, exercising, on working or working on their sides project regularly, which begs the question, why are some people more motivated to tackle difficult things, and is there a way to make doing difficult things easy? To answer this question, we need to look at this brain neurotransmitter, dopamine. Dopamine is often considered a pleasure molecule, but that's not quite what it does. Dopamine is what makes us desire things, and it's that desire that gives us the motivation to get up and do stuff. If you are not sure how powerful dopamine is, let me introduce you to a few experiments neuroscientists did on rats. The researchers implemented electrodes in the brains of rats. Whenever the rat pulled a lever, the researchers stimulated the rat's reward system in the brain. The result was that the rats developed a craving so strong they kept pulling the lever over and over for hours. The rats would refuse to eat or even sleep. They would just keep pressing the lever until they would drop from exhaustion. But then the process was reversed. The researchers blocked the release of dopamine in the brain reward center. As a result, rats become so lethargic that even getting up to get a drink of water was not worth the effort. They wouldn't eat. They didn't want to meet. They didn't crave anything at all. You could say that the rats lost all will to live. However, if food was placed directly in their mouth, the rats would still eat and enjoy the food. They just didn't have the motivation to get up and do it themselves. You would think that it's thirst or hunger that motivates us to get food or water. But there is also dopamine that plays a key role here. Those rats experiments might be extreme cases, but you can see similar effect dopamine has in human and in our daily lives. In fact, your brain develops priorities in large part based on how much dopamine it's expecting to get. If an activity releases too little dopamine, you will not have much motivation to do it. But if an activity releases a lot of dopamine, you will be motivated to repeat it over and over. So, which behaviors release dopamine? Any activity where you anticipate there is a potential reward, release it. But if you know there are no immediate rewards with the behavior, your brain will not release it. For example, before you eat comfort food, your brain releases dopamines because you anticipate that the food will make you feel good, even if it actually makes you feel worse. That's because your brain doesn't even care if the high dopamine activity is damaging to you. It just wants more more it. A stereotypical example would be someone who is drug addict. He knows that he is doing is not good for him, but all he wants to get more of that drug. Besides getting you high, cocaine and heroin release unnatural amounts of dopamine, which in turn makes you crave them even more. Of course, it has to be noted that nearly everything releases some amount of dopamine. Even drinking water when you are thirsty does. But the highest dopamine release happens when you get a reward randomly. One such example is playing on a slot machine in a casino. Even if you have only been losing money until that point, you eventually expect to get bigger reward. You just don't know when it could happen. And in today's digital society, we are flooding our brains with unnaturally high amount of dopamine on a daily basis, even if we don't know it. Some example of high dopamine behaviors included scrolling through social media website, playing video games, watching internet, pornography, etc. We anticipate some sort of reward with each one of those behaviors. That's why we are constantly checking our phones. We expect to see a text message or some other notification, and we know that eventually we are going to receive it. We are becoming like those rats pulling the lever, trying to get a new dopamine hit. And you might think, oh, so what? It's not like it's harming me in any way, but you would be wrong. Our body have a biological system called homeostasis. It means that our body likes to keep internal physical and chemical conditions at a balanced level. Whenever an imbalance occurs, our body adapts to it. Let me give you an example. When it's cold outside, our body temperature falls, and as a result, we start shivering to generate heat and warm the body. However, when it's hot outside, our body temperature rises and we start sweating to lose some of the heat. Essentially, our body is looking to maintain a temperature of around 37 degrees Celsius or 98 degrees Fahrenheit, no matter what. But there is another way homeostasis manifests itself, and that is through tolerance. For example, someone who rarely drinks alcohol will get drunk really fast, but someone who drinks on a regular basis will have to drink more alcohol because their body has developed a tolerance to it. Essentially, it takes more and more alcohol to make them drunk because they have become less sensitive to its effect. And it's not much different with dopamine. Your body tries to maintain homeostasis, so it regulates your dopamine receptors. Essentially, your brain gets used to having high levels of dopamine, and those levels become your new normal. Thus, you develop a dopamine tolerance. This can be a huge problem because the things that don't give you as much dopamine don't interest you any longer, and it's much more difficult to motivate yourself to do them. They feel boring and less fun because they don't release as much dopamine compared to the things that do release it in high amount. That's why people tend to prefer playing video games or browsing the internet compared to studying or working on their business. Video games make us feel good and comfortable as they release a lot of dopamine. Sadly, things like working hard or reading release it in lower amount. This is one of the reasons why drug addicts who try to quit have a hard time adjusting to a normal life. Their dopamine tolerance gets so high that normal life isn't able to match it. They become like those rats from previous experiment who have no motivation to do anything. If there is not enough dopamine release, and it's not just drug addict, people who are addicted to video games, social media or internet pornography experiences the same things. Once their dopamine tolerance gets too high, they simply are not enjoy low dopamine behaviors, which begs the question, is there anything that can be done to prevent this? The answer is you need to perform a dopamine detox. By now might already have an idea what dopamine detox is going to look like. What you are going to do is set aside a day where you are going to avoid all the highly stimulating activities. You are going to stop flooding your brain with high amount of dopamine, and you are going to let your dopamine receptors recover. Just a disclaimer, if you are suffering from drug addiction, then I suggest you seek professional help, as you have probably formed a psychological dependence, and I don't want you to experience any extreme withdrawal symptoms. Now back to the detox. For one whole day you will try to have as little fun as possible. You will not be able to using the internet or any technology like your phone or computers. You are not allowed to listen to music, you are not allowed to masturbate or eat any junk food. Basically, you are going to remove all sources of external pleasure for the entire day. You are going to embrace boredom and trust. Trust me, there will be a lot of boredom. You are, however, allowed to do the following: go for a walk, meditate, and be alone with your thoughts. Reflect on your life and goals. Write down any ideas you get, not on your computer or phone, but on a physical piece of paper. All of these might seem quite intense, but if you want radical result and you want them fast, you need to be able to take radical action. Now you might be asking yourself, why would this even work? You can think of it this way. Let's say that you have been eating every single meal at the best restaurant in your town. As a result, what happened is that those fancy meals become your new normal. If someone offered you a bowl of plain rice, you would probably refuse it. So simply would not taste as good as your usual restaurant meal. But if you suddenly find yourself stranded on a deserted island and you are starving suddenly, that bowl of plain rice does not seem so bad, and that is what the dopamine detox does. It starves you of all the pleasure you usually get, and in turn it makes those less satisfying activities more desirable. To put it simply, dopamine detox works because you become so bored that boring stuff becomes more fun. Now, if you don't want to take such extreme action and starve yourself of all the pleasure, you can perform a smaller dopamine detox. You are going to pick one day of the week where you are going to refrain from one of your high dopamine behaviors completely, whatever that behavior might be. Maybe checking your phone all the time, playing video games on your computers, binge watching TV, eating junk food, watching internet pornography, whatever. And from now on, every single week for one whole day, you are going to avoid that activity. You can still do other things, but behavior you pick is off limit. Yes, you are feel slightly bored, but that's the point. You want to let your dopamine receptors recover from the unnaturally high dopamine that has been flooding your brain, and boredom is going to propel you to do other things that day. So Thanks a lot for watching this video, guys. We will meet in the next video. By then, bye.